And welcome, Hoosier fans, to a disappointing episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. This is our 98th episode, recorded on Saturday, January 13th, 2024, as we count down to our 100th show. I'm your host, Jeff Marlow, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kathy Amos. Tonight, we'll be breaking down your number 14, number 13 Hoosiers 84-57 loss to the number 3 Iowa Hawkeyes. That snaps their 13-game winning streak, bringing the record to 14-2 overall, 5-1 in the Big Ten. And tonight, the banner moment, as usual, we'll start the show with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. Kathy, I'm not sure. I'm not sure there are too many banner moments here.
Yeah.
But I'm going to kind of go back into the first quarter when I thought we really had it. We're still playing fairly well before the turnover started to pack up. And we went inside to Mackenzie on a couple of possessions, not right back to back, but there were a couple of possessions. We got to Mackenzie. They came to double her, and Mackenzie was able to find people wide open on the backside for a layup. So that banner moment for me tonight is going to be, the fact that early on when we were executing, we were playing and looked like we knew how we wanted to attack the Iowa defense, but just the turnovers would rack up on us as well. So our Hoosier banner moment, our banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, presenting sponsor of the Back Home Network, which includes the Assembly Call and Crimson Cast. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line. You are bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that just loves great collegiate gear. Not only do you get quality apparel, but you are supporting an Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelley School of Business. Go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME23, that's HOM23, to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. And just some quick news that we may have missed early in the middle of the week, at least I know I did. The Mackenzie Holmes was named to the Wooden Award midseason top 25. For those of you who don't follow that, they start the preseason with the top 50, and then they knock it down in the midseason to the top 25. Other Big Ten players on the list included Caitlin Clark, Cody McMahon, and J.C. Sheldon. And let's throw it over to Kathy here and get her initial thoughts about tonight's game with the Amos angle.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. So, for those of you maybe who haven't heard, the weather's not good here in Iowa. Not only did we have record-setting over 20 inches of snow this week, and that was before we got actually a little more snow today. It is now bitterly cold. We didn't even get above zero today, and it seems to me that cold, I think, kind of followed our team into Hawkeye Arena today, both on, I think, the defensive end as well as our shooting end and taking care of the ball. I think those three things in particular, three-point shooting, our defense just really didn't seem to be quite as dialed in, and our turnovers, just especially from a couple of key players, just really wasn't there for us tonight. And when you're going on the road, and playing not just anybody on the road in the Big Ten, but especially the number 3 team in the country, if you even have just one of those, it's going to be a rough night. When you combine all of 3 of those together, I think you get what we have tonight. So welcome to everyone here late on a Saturday night. I'm glad to have everyone here in the Workaholics. So happy to see you, and glad this is only episode number 98 for us, Jeff, and not number 100. So we're closing in on it. And we were concerned with if this got rescheduled, this might actually have turned out to be our 100 episode. So I'm glad it wasn't. So we'll break it all down for you guys from what we see. We're happy to hear what you have in the chat as well, and kind of react to it. But to me, those were kind of the 3 key errors that we had tonight were, again, takeaways, 3-point shooting, and our defensive.
And Kathy, I think you kind of throw that all into one. I thought by the second half, especially, and by the middle of the third quarter, into the fourth quarter, even toward the end of the game, I thought offensive issues affected defense, and the turnovers racked up. We missed shots. We even missed some shots from, Mackenzie missed start the fourth quarter. Mackenzie basically misses a point blank layup. We missed some shots we know kids can make. And I just thought that really affected the defense at the other end. And then by middle of the fourth quarter, they were starting to roll. The crowd was really into it. And you get into one of those situations where nobody, I think it was Stulkey with like 4 minutes to go, banks in a jumper from about 12 feet. That thing was rock hard, but it hits the glass and goes in. And it becomes a little bit of that perfect storm with it as well. So, it's just one of those, but again, I know you can't let that, you don't want to let that happen, but they're also human. They're on the road. They're in an environment that, looked like the crowd really showed up last night and I know you said the weather was even worse yesterday. But if you saw the pictures out of the men's game at Iowa last night, you could almost count the people at the game with, on a couple of hands last night. Tonight, it looked like the crowd was in full force.
Yeah, I was actually a little surprised at that. The weather here, while it's not snowing, it's really blowing, and there's still actually a lot of roads closed. I was actually a little surprised by that, and with the sub-zero temperatures that we're experiencing too. So, but it is what it is, and we'll just move on to the next one. But do you want to talk pivotal plays?
Sure. Let's go pivotal plays, and I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'm not really quite sure where to start with this. So, kind of looking at the first quarter, we're really battling in that first quarter. In fact, there was a sequence of events where we got, a great transition defense. Actually, we know there was a couple of times early in that first quarter, our transition defense wasn't there. We had the timeout and we seemed to lock in then. We had some great transition defense, specifically by Yarden, where she got a block. And then Mackenzie gets the ball down on the other end, but she misses the money, but she gets her own rebound, goes back up for 2, and then she gets the block on the other end, comes back down and goes down low for another 2, gets fouled, and we ended up finally tying the game at 17-17. So while that was early, I thought that was a place where it might have been, kind of pivotal for us. Something that we could build off of. And, we wouldn't exactly, but we kept it close. They only scored 2 more points after that to end that quarter 19-17. So to me, I thought that was pretty pivotal kind of sequence event in that first quarter.
Well, I'm going to go back to even more into the second quarter here, or I'll kind of kick ahead to the second quarter. And I thought that, they were trying to pay so much attention to Caitlin Clark. And I get it. Yeah, I would have had maybe the same attitude defensively. I would have, Caitlin's going to get her 25 to 30. But what you don't want her to go is for like 45. And so I thought they were so closed in or so locked in on what Caitlin Clark was doing, especially when she drove, that they almost overhelped. They really collapsed. Not just one person, but 2 people coming to help, or even sometimes 3 with people in the lane, 3 other people with at least a foot in the lane. And then we talked about this on the preview of this on Wednesday night, that Gabby Marshall and Molly Davis had been struggling to shoot the ball for the most part this year, and they found their shots and they hit shots. And again, I get it. I think I would have done a lot of the same thing in terms of I'm willing to make other, your role players beat you, but you also can't overhelp on it. And then I thought once those kids gained some and so it wasn't just one play, but it was just kind of the sequence of plays there in the second quarter, especially where we just kind of, and we saw more of it in the second half too, where we just kind of overhelped. And with that, so that's kind of the pivotal play I'll go back to, is just kind of the overall idea of the defense, but it just didn't get executed well.
Yeah, I would say that for sure. How many threes did they end up? I know we're not in the numbers, but we ended up giving up 36 threes that Iowa took, and they made 15 of them for 42%. And you have a team like Iowa who can really put up the numbers. I wasn't really concerned about their interior presence. And it was something I think we talked about in the preview game or preview show. I really don't think that the interior defense is what made me nervous. And we saw a lot of our guards going down and helping. And so, yes, Caitlin Clark put up 30. That wasn't the problem tonight. She's going to put up 30. That's what her average is for the year. So not really, I think, what hurt us. I think it was the 3 other players that ended up scoring double digits. We had Molly Davis, Kate Martin, and Gabby Marshall, like you had mentioned. All 3 of them ended up in double digits, where I, don't think that all 3 of them have been scoring in double digits this year. So to me, again, that's what we talked about, is what I had mentioned today on Substack and to another one. If you could slow down Clark a little bit, which we didn't, which is fine. But if even if you can't, you have to keep the other players from filling in the gaps. And we absolutely didn't do that. And then it was exacerbated by the fact that we only shot 25% ourselves from 3-point line, 5 of 20. And to me, those were the two factors in particular that really hurt us.
And we didn't shoot well at the free throw line again. So
No.
we're trying to save some of that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the end of the second
numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go back to the end of the second quarter, Kathy, where, kind of that sequence there at the end of the second quarter where going into the half. And again, we've seen this a little bit where Iowa scored. I can't remember if it was a 3 or not, but they got a 3. I think it was a bucket or a 3. I can't remember if it was a 2 or 3. So I'll say a bucket. And then we had the ball and a chance to kind of wind the clock down. And I think Lexi Bargesser turned it over, down by the Iowa bench. And now we give it back to them. And then Clark hits the 3, which I know was a 3 at the end of the half. And now you're down 43-37. So instead of having an opportunity, again, to close out the half with maybe a lead with everything that had gone on, they were still battling. They had 8 turnovers before Lexi turned it over. So they had 8 turnovers already in the first half. We're shooting a little bit better, but they had a chance maybe to grab a lead or only be down to 1, maybe 2 points at the half. And again, I know 6 doesn't sound like a lot, but the momentum just all kind of, to me, swung, especially at the end of the half there. And that's to me is a pivotal play there.
Yeah. And I wrote down a couple of pivotal plays in the second quarter where I thought they might get to be pivotal, and one turned out to be pivotal and one didn't. So at the 7:05 mark, that's when Caitlin Clark in the second quarter, not the first, actually hit her first 3. And I wrote down, does that get her going? Right after that, she hit her second 3, and then she was off to the races. That same quarter, on the flip side of it, I wrote down something similar, 4:59. Sydney got our second 3 as a team. And I said, now can we get it going? And we just couldn't. And so I think we had kind of 2 contrasting stories there. One where Iowa really got it going, and 2 where we just really couldn't get it going. And this was another example similar to back in Stanford, where our outside shooting just wasn't there. And, Jeff, I know you and I were talking about it before the game, or before our show started. We just seem to be a team of 2 extremes with our 3-point shooting. We have tonight where we couldn't shoot at all. And then we had Nebraska where we couldn't seem to miss it all. And so, to me, I think that we just need to find some kind of consistency, and it doesn't have to be to one extreme or to another, but a consistency that seems to be something we can maintain on the road, which we did at Nebraska. So this is a very different environment than what we got in Nebraska. But the Nebraska crowd, I was at that game, and that Nebraska crowd wasn't bad, right? I mean, they were close to sold out for their arena, which was around a little over 9,000 people. So it wasn't a bad crowd, and they were into it at the beginning of that game too. So I don't think it was the atmosphere per se. It just wasn't our night, and I think we'll have those. Can I talk to you maybe just about a couple of coaching questions? So tonight, where we expected really to see Hannah Stuelke played the bulk on Caitlin or Mackenzie Holmes, I didn't feel like she was actually in there. She only played 23 games, but instead, they were really playing. What was the other lady's name?
They played Goodman and O'Grady about 16 minutes combined.
That was it. Goodman. Yes, that's who I was looking for. Thank you. Do you think that was because they didn't feel that Iowa was really, that Stuelke wasn't able to guard Holmes, and that they were doing kind of a better job on bodying her up? I didn't feel they really slowed her down, but it felt like they did a little bit. But what are your thoughts on why we didn't see Stuelke play more?
I think it was a little bit of both. I don't think they felt that Stuelke could handle her. And with the way that Mackenzie kind of got off, I think they just wanted to get a bigger body on them. And I think they also were worried that Mackenzie might draw Stuelke into foul trouble. If you look at, you look at Goodman and O'Grady combined, they had 4 fouls. So, if Stuelke plays more of the minutes, then maybe she would have been, but I don't think it would have mattered much tonight, Kathy, in terms of how much Stuelke played and how much she guarded Mackenzie in terms of the overall result. But I think they were trying to, to keep her out there. But we've seen this a little bit, Stuelke, she only had 5 points, but she's had a decent season for them. But I've watched them the couple times I've watched them before this, where she's at times been very very kind of, I won't say invisible, but she's not been the focal point of the offense. And of course, she's not going to be Caitlin Clark, but she's not the second or third option some nights.
Yeah, I agree. And then the second general overarching question as a coach, and this may be I mean, it's not specific to this game. I've seen this a lot, but I saw this in our private chat in the Discord, and a question from people, why Iowa was keeping their starters in so late into the game when they had such a big lead. And I had heard somewhere, so you tell me if there's any validity to this. I had heard somewhere that the coach that is winning will not take out the bulk of their starters until the other team does, showing that they've given up. And I kind of saw that tonight, that we didn't see Iowa take out their starters until we started taking out ours. So is there validity to that, or is it just kind of a theory? I heard that kind of thrown out there.
Yeah, there's some validity to that. There are some coaches like that, and there are some coaches who understand that, you know, and again, the college game may be a little different than the high school game, because they're in the high school game, when you get down 15, 20 points into the fourth quarter, a lot of times you're like probably not making the run, not unless you know you've got a really good team that, for example, but how many times in a high school game are you going to come back from 15 or 20 down in a quarter? If you've gotten behind by that much in 3 quarters, it's usually going to take you more than 1 to dig it out. So, but yeah, it's a legit philosophy. And that may have been what Lisa Bluter was doing. And with that, I can't speak too much to what her philosophy will be. But I think there was something to that tonight. I think, you know, the one thing that used to frustrate me, because was when we would do things like that, where we would send our kids in, I ran into a few coaches like this, and I learned which ones they were, and I made sure it didn't happen again. But like, if we were behind, or if we were beating somebody really big, 20, 25, and I would send my bench kids in, they would want to bring their starters back and press my bench kids. And then all of a sudden, you know, like, make it look like it's going to be, I'm like, so I'll be like, no, you're not going to do that to my bench kids. So one night, in fact, I ended up running my starters back in, because, and then I had some of the other fans like, oh, what's going on? You know, you get yelling at me from behind scores, but like, what's going on? And I just looked down and shook my head. I'm like, my thought process was, talk to your coach and ask him why he's pressing my bench kids,
Right.
you know, with his starters. I brought his starters back in and wanted to press my bench kids. But yeah, Lisa Bluter could have something to that. I don't know how much that plays in the factor. I just think at the college level, they got their rotations, and they figure, you know, so, you know, you look even at like Iowa tonight winning by 27. They had a couple kids that only play. They had 1, 2, 3, 4. So it looks like they had a bunch of kids play, but they didn't get very many minutes. Four of them got, 8 minutes or less. So.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
any other,
you got any more?
No.
You got any more pivotal plays?
I don't think so.
So let's head to the numbers here.
Okay, well, we've talked quite a bit about numbers. So I've talked about turnovers a lot. So I'll just go ahead and start with that. So 15-13, 15 for us, 13 for Iowa. So while it sounds like it's pretty even, I think ours just came at really pivotal points. And also Iowa got more points off of those turnovers as well, with 16. So I just really think that our turnovers came at just really inopportune times, and it set the mood. In fact, I think Garzon had 6 of our 15 turnovers, and she had at least 2 within the first, few minutes of the first quarter. And then she opened up the second quarter with a travel as well, getting her third turnover. And it just, in general, I just didn't feel like Garzon had a good night. I know she ended up with 11 points, but it just seemed like a struggle for her. She wasn't quite there offensively, other than she did finally get to 11 points, but it was on 4 of 9 shooting, 3 of 7 from 3-point, which helps get that number up. But it just wasn't an efficient night. She only had 1 assist, and I thought defensively she wasn't quite there yet either. So those turnovers in particular, I thought, were really a killer for us in that game. Yeah,
and I'll go back to one that you mentioned a little bit, talk about shooting in general. First half, we were 16 for 29. They talk about tale of 2 games. 16 of 29, we were shooting 55%. You and I were kind of having the conversation, really not shooting that bad. But then here's the second half numbers. 7 for 25, 28%. Or excuse me, 28% on 7 of 25 shooting. You're not going to win on the road. No matter, even without the turnovers, You're not winning on the road in that environment in the league, going 7 for 25 in the second half. You have to be able to make some shots. And again, I know the kids were trying. I thought the kids were giving an effort. I thought they were trying. Did they execute very well? No, I didn't think they executed very well. And I think that's going to be a lot of the talk when they get back to Bloomington tomorrow or tonight, whenever I'll be tomorrow when they probably go back into Cook Hall and look at the film and stuff. But they didn't execute. And Terry Morin talked about it. Mm-hmm. She talked about it if you were able to watch the game. She talked about it in the one timeout where they had her mic'd up. She talked about it in the interview. That they just like she said in the timeout, we're not making them guard us. That was in the first quarter, I think, and just execution lacked tonight. I'll be the first to admit that. Didn't execute. Didn't really play with a lot of focus. But I thought that the competitiveness
was there.
Whereas in the Stanford game, I did question their effort a little bit. I will admit that. I'll go back to that Stanford game. Like, I was very disappointed in the effort. Tonight, the effort wasn't so much. Execution was poor. The turnovers were bad. The shooting was bad. And they just steamrolled on them.
Yeah, I agree. And, especially in the first half, I thought the effort was really there. Now, I think it kind of, slacked off in the fourth quarter. Not surprisingly, right? I think they were pretty deflated at that point. They knew that was probably going to be too much for them to handle. And in fact, I think they were leading the rebounding battle up until or pretty close to that second or fourth quarter. They were definitely winning at halftime by 19-18. And then in the second half, they got out rebounded here just by 18 to is that right? Yeah, sorry. They got out rebounded by 10 in the fourth quarter alone. So yeah, I think the effort was there tonight. And to me, I think even though overall they got out rebounded, I thought they were actually looked better on the rebounding. And, Iowa, in fact, only had 4 second chance points, which is something we were really concerned about. Iowa was the number 1 leading rebounding team in the Big Ten coming into this. And even though it looks lopsided by 9 right now, the margin, I really thought that they played pretty well on the glass rebounding wise. And again, until that fourth quarter when I think things just really got out of control. So if you look at the box score, I don't think it tells the tale of rebounding, but what are your thoughts on the rebounding tonight?
I thought they did better. They only ended up giving up 8 offensive rebounds. And that we talked about, I think in the first half and maybe middle of the second quarter, Iowa already had 4. So they got a little better in terms of what they gave up on the defensive rebounding. Getting beat by 9 on the glass, though, is still a concern. But like looking at some of the workaholic comments here, I do agree. I think there's a lot from this game that you go back, as I was saying just a second ago, whether it's rebounding, the turnovers, the execution, is something they're going to be able to learn from. And they get Iowa again back in Bloomington. That's the thing. This is not just the only time we're playing them. Learn from it. Do I want to lose by 27? No. But the sky isn't falling. We're 14-2. We're 5-1 in the league. We're second place. And you lost on the road in a game that I think we all thought was going to be a loss when we went through the preseason schedule. So I don't think there's anything here other than losing by 27. But I thought rebounding wise, Kathy, one thing, I thought they really were locked in defensively rebounding on the first few possessions because they had such good blockouts. The ball was hitting the floor. That's right. An old fashioned rebounding drill.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I had no issues really with the rebounding tonight. I thought they looked much better and focused on the defensive end. Like I said, Iowa only had 4 second chance points. So I think that had a lot to say with it. What other numbers did you want to talk about?
Well, kind of combined, that is for 2 teams in a game that I thought there was quite a few. I thought it was physical, and I felt like there were more fouls called than obviously there were. But both teams combined only shot 21 free throws. Iowa was 9 for 10. Indiana, though, only 6 for 11. So they did have the officials did let them to a certain degree kind of play. They didn't put both teams. There were not a ton of free throw shot. Unfortunately. The free throws weren't the difference tonight. 6 out of 11 isn't making the difference in a 27-point game, but we just, it kind of went back to the turnovers though. We just couldn't handle, that part of it. I wanted to comment on the free throws real quick. And then obviously I don't have the stats in front of me, Kathy, but other than the Stanford game, I can't imagine there's a game this year where we had a single digit quarter like we did tonight. For the fourth quarter, we only scored 9 points, and maybe the Stanford game be the only one I can imagine we had a quarter. So it just tells you a little bit about how the offense just really went to the execution and the lack of execution and the lack of hitting shots really showed up in the fourth quarter, because I can't remember another game outside, like I said, maybe the Stanford game, where we had single-digit quarter.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, really the tail of the game, again, we talked about turnovers. Their points off turnovers was 16. We talked about the defense. They gave up 84 points. The biggest thing was 15 threes versus 5. And to me, I mean, that's a huge deficit when you have
Plus 30.
more. Yeah, that's 30 right there by itself. And so you take that away, even cut it a little bit in half, this could have been more of a game. Yeah, to your point with the fouls, I didn't think the refs were really all that fantastic tonight, but I thought they were evenly terrible on both sides of it. I mean, both Caitlin Clark and Chloe Moore-McNeil ended up with 4 personal fouls. So I guess we can't complain too much, because both of them going at each other, I guess. Well, I guess Caitlin Clark wasn't guarding Chloe, but Chloe was definitely guarding Caitlin for a good chunk of it. And that fourth foul on Chloe, I thought was a little suspect, but otherwise they were equally pretty bad.
And I'm not trying to be, I one thing we've always tried to pride ourselves on this is to give reasonable analysis and not just, kind of hyperbole. But I just felt like tonight, I felt there were, Chloe had a little foul trouble. I know she can't play 40 minutes, but I felt like Lexi really struggled to guard Caitlin Clark when she was in the game. And
yeah, she really did.
That's a tough assignment for a kid like Lexi, sophomore, who's coming off the bench. But yeah, I agree. There was that call on Chloe as well. But yeah, I didn't think
when Mac, got the ball with her hands, but they called it a kickball.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, that wasn't the reason they shot 10 more made 10 more 3-pointers than us. Not shot, made 10 more. I mean, really, that was the killer. Our just perimeter defense, again, like you'd mentioned, I really agree with you. I think we're just, for whatever reason, over helping when down in the paint. And I'm not quite sure, because, we have our, reigning Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year down in the paint. So I'm not quite sure why we're worried on that. And I didn't think Iowa, what has hurt us in the past is actually, people driving and then kicking it out. And I didn't really feel that was going on either. It just didn't feel like we were guarding some of those defensive or perimeter very well. We were just helping down the paint. Maybe 2 or 3, our defenders were getting down the paint and leaving their really excellent shooters wide open. So I think that was the key to the game to me tonight, of what made us lost, and then compounded again, turnovers. So.
Yeah. So let's move on to the game ball, and I'll let you go first, Kathy, here on the game ball. And she's going to throw up the scroll here for those of you who are watching on the live YouTube feed. Mackenzie Holmes currently with 5 to lead the way, and then Sarah with 4, Sydney 3, and Yarden with 3. So those are our ones with game balls. So Kathy, I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to give my game ball here to Mackenzie Holmes. She had a very rough night down low in terms of shooting compared to what we're used to her seeing. 6 of 13, but she still ended up with 16 points, and 7 rebounds and 4 assists. The other thing for Mackenzie is that, I think she had only 2 fouls as well. And I thought she was actually playing really well defensively. So overall, I thought Mackenzie had probably the best game of anyone on the team in terms of both ends of the court. So for me, Mackenzie gets my game ball.
I mean, we're going to make that unanimous, and I'm just going to throw in there, she also had 2 blocks and 2 blocks and a steal. So we're going to make that unanimous. So Mackenzie Holmes will pick up her 6th game ball of the year. And Kathy, so as easy as that was, because I really didn't feel like there were anybody else that you could talk about.
No.
Now for the Grace Berger Hardest Worker Award, we may have a couple people to talk about here, but we'll go with the scroll here real quick for those watching on the live YouTube feed. Sydney Parrish right now is leading the way, along with Mackenzie Holmes with 4. Chloe Moore-McNeil, Lexi Bargesser each have 2, and then Lene Beaumont and Lily Meister each with 1. And since I'm running I'm running the host role tonight, and Kathy's playing producer, we're going to let her go first.
I get to go first. Yeah, this is way tougher, right? I mean, you can't just look at points. You have Sydney Parrish and Yarden Garzone with 11 each. Chloe Moore-McNeil put up 9 and 6 assists, but had 4 personal fouls, but no turnovers. So that was good. Sarah Scalia, I don't even know that we didn't really touch on her a whole lot, but this was not a game for Sarah. She ended up 0 for 4 from 3-point land, only 3 of 10 from the field goal range for her 6 points, and no free throws at all, no assists. So this was just not Sarah's game at all. So,
she disappeared.
She really disappeared on us. I mean, in total, at least there have been other games, before. I know we're talking about the Graceburger's hardest workers. There have been other games where Sarah has struggled shooting her three, but she's found other ways to impact the game, right? Assists or really strong defense. I didn't really see much of that from her tonight at all.
In fairness to her, I'm not going to write, but I'll just say in fairness to her, she did have 9 rebouns, but other than that, that was the only time I heard her. I really felt like her name was called.
Yeah, that's true. She did lead the team in rebounds. So, she did at least contribute there. To my point earlier, I felt we were rebounding harder. So to me, I think it came down to Sydney Parrish and Chloe Moore McNeil. And I finally landed on Chloe Moore McNeil in my head. She had 9 points and 6 assists for us. And even though she had 4 turnovers, 4 fouls, she had no turnovers too, but 4 fouls. She had, the toughest by far any defensive assignment that anyone's going to have with Caitlin Clark. And I thought she did an admirable job, especially, kind of slowing her down towards the beginning of the first quarter. Caitlin didn't make any 3-pointers at all. So I'm giving my Graceburger hardest worker award to Chloe Moore McNeil. I thought she just did a nice job for us, especially at the beginning of the game where she was really driving offensively. I think that she scored our first 5 points. She got a 3 and then drove to the basket for 2. So she got, if not her first 5, she had 5 of our first points. So for me, it was Chloe.
Yeah, I can see how you would go that way. So we're going to need some help in the workaholics here. I'm going to go with Sydney. Sydney on the night she only had 8 shots, but she made half of them. She was 4 for 8. She only 1 for 4 from 3, but she was also 2 for 2 at the line. Again, limited opportunities, but at least she hit her 2 free throws.
She hit them.
Yeah, and I agree. But she had 6 rebounds. And now she didn't have any assists. So this is kind of where you kind of get back here. But she had 5 steals tonight and a block. So, I was kind of looking at that, and her and Chloe kind of like kind of toss up. Chloe a couple less points, but she had those assists. But Chloe didn't have any turnovers, but she didn't have any rebounds either. So I came down on Sydney mainly because of the rebounds and the steals that she provided. But it looks like to me the workaholics here are kind of speaking with for Chloe. So we'll go with Chloe as the Graceburger hardest worker, because I just thought Sid was one that I was going to go with. But that's what the beauty of this show is that we get some difference of opinion, and we have some of our friends of the workaholics help us out.
Yeah, and that was, I can see it going either way. The way it swung it for me, for Chloe in particular, was her defense, at least in the first half on Caitlin Clark. I know, again, Caitlin ended up putting 30 up, and people will probably wonder about that. But I think it would have been maybe different if the game was going a little differently. But I thought Chloe came out on fire and very focused on that defensive end. And the 6 assists I thought were really great. So
real quick before we get out of here, Kathy, I want to get your thoughts on this, because we were talking about this a little bit in the chat, or not the chat, well, on the Discord a little bit too, and on our text back and forth. It just was one of those nights when you're going to win in the league on a game like this. I felt like Chloe and Sydney and Mac looked focused, like you said at the beginning. I thought they really looked focused. Yes. Yarden and Sarah did not seem to have that same focus. Now, maybe they did. It just didn't appear that way on TV. But they both struggled. Both those players struggled into pretty much till halftime. It's just hard to win, isn't it, when you go on the road in that environment against a team like that, when 2 of your 5 starters really didn't help much, at least in the first half.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on top of it, we didn't have anyone that come in off our bench. So, the thing with Iowa, they had, Stuelke wasn't giving it to them. And so they had Goodman and O'Grady that could come in and help her. Well, who did we have? Sarah Scalia wasn't doing anything for us. So they were trying Bargesser, and it's just not there for her yet. I think she's so much more improved than last year, but as a sophomore, it wasn't there for her tonight. She did end up scoring 4 points, but our bench gave us really very little to talk about other than 4 points from Lexi Bargesser. She had 1 assist. Other than that, Lene Beaumont had 1 rebound in the bench. Beside that, they fouled. Right. Yeah. There was nothing else that we could really talk about with our bench tonight either. It just was, honestly, as much as it pains me to say it, I think Iowa had the deeper and more talented team tonight on top of everything else. Yep. We hurt ourselves, but I really do think they had the more talented team than we did.
They played better tonight. I don't know about the more talented, but they played better tonight with all of their players than ours did. And
their talent showed up more than our talent. How about
very
that?
Good. Great way of putting it. Great way of putting it. Because I just think that, when we look at it from the standpoint It will go back. And again, I can understand why Coach Morin did this, but other than Lexi, nobody really got minutes off the bench. Lily had 9 and she got 9 minutes, but Lene had 5, Jules 2. I mean, that really, and then Hannah got in right at the end. But other
Yeah,
than that,
and
I mean,
Lily
it
had
really was
9.
limited minutes again on the bench. And I can get that. It was a tough environment. I'm not sure that Lene and Jules, in a game where especially once you got behind by double digits, it's probably not a game to get those 2 freshmen in there and say, hey, why don't you go out there and see if you can make something happen? Probably not fair to
Right.
them. But yeah, it just, just one of those nights. And again, we talked about the bench, but like you said, even if the bench isn't scoring, they got to find a way to put some stats there. They got to get some rebounds. They got to get a few assists, do something besides just foul.
Yeah. Looking ahead and way ahead, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with both of these teams in the offseason. I think there could be a bit of roster shifting that we're going to see on both sides of it. So I think these are 2 teams next year that may look very different than what we saw tonight too. But tonight was definitely Iowa's night. So do you want to talk MAC real quick?
Yep, you go ahead. You've been doing the MAC watch, so bring us up to date on MAC watch.
Okay, so Mackenzie had ended up with 16 points tonight, and she had 7 rebounds and 2 block shots. So that takes her total in terms of points up to 2,209 points. So that puts her 155 behind first place. So based on the 12 regular season games that we have left, that is a 12.9 or say a 13-point average that she needs to maintain to take over first place. In terms of the other ones we've kind of been watching, she's inching up on the rebounding list. So she is currently in 6th place, and to get to 5th place, she needs 35 more rebounds. So that one looks within reach for her as well. So that is where we're at with the Mackenzie watch.
And so coming up next, the Indiana Hoosiers will be playing the Minnesota Golden Gophers on Wednesday, January 17th. That game is at 8:00 Eastern, 7 Central, and it will be on Peacock. All right. For those of you who trying to struggle, who are struggling, who are struggling to keep up with what network you're on. People are struggling. Being the Dolphins fan that I am, I'm keeping a peek of the eye on there right now, Peacock. But all the Dolphin fans were complaining about having to watch an NFL playoff game on Peacock tonight, and so I was like, I felt like putting out there like you ought to be a Big Ten basketball fan, and try to find out where your game is. But Minnesota, by the way, currently number 35 in the net. Minnesota leads the all-time series 37-34. Indiana won last year up in Minneapolis, 77-54. They've won 9 of the last 10, including the last 6. Minnesota will come into town with a 12-3 record, at least at this point, 2-2 in the conference. They play in Minneapolis against Nebraska tomorrow. So we'll kind of update that. But as far as we know right now, they're 12-3, 2-2. They've got losses to UConn, who's number 4 in the net. Back in November in Minneapolis, 62-44. They lost to Iowa at Iowa, 94-71. And then they lost at Maryland, who's number 31 in the net, 72-64. So their 3 losses are solid losses in terms of the net. They've beat Stony Brook, number 63, 67-54 at home. Beat Drake, number 70 in the net. We're talking here 94-88 in double overtime at home. Beat Purdue, who's number 77, 60-58. And Michigan, number 41, which probably right now maybe their best win is the game against Michigan, because they just beat Michigan in Ann Arbor the other night, 82-66. So, Kathy, why don't you talk about their team and their personnel a little bit?
Yeah, so they are coached by Dawn. I'm going to butcher her name. Plitzewit? Do you know? Is that right?
I think it's Plitzewit, but don't quote me. I'm not sure either.
Okay. That sounds good. We'll say Plitzewit. Sorry, Dawn, if we are
Coach Dawn.
Coach Dawn. This is her first season with the Minnesota Gophers. Interesting. She was at West Virginia last year, but only 1 year at West Virginia. But she did take them to the tourney last year. Before that, she was at South Dakota from 2016 through 2022. When she was at South Dakota, her record as their head coach was 158-36. So really quite a respectable record. As a team, they are shooting scoring 28 point. Oh my goodness. They are scoring 78.6 points per game, which is 7th in the conference, but they're only giving up 59 points per game, which is 2nd in the conference. That 2nd in the conference is actually ahead of us defensively, and that's probably going to be worse after tonight's night. In terms of shooting percentages, they shoot 44% from field goal range, which is 8th, 35% from 3-point, which is only 7th, but they tend to attempt at least 24 threes per game. Free throws are actually really bad. They're 69.8%, which is last in the league. For turnover margin, they're actually 3rd in the league and are at a +5 turnover margin. They are also a +7.8 rebounding margin, which is good for 4th. And then in terms of attendance, they're used to playing in front of about 4,000 people.
Real quick before you move on to some of the personnel.
Yeah.
No, I'll let you talk about the individual a bit. I just want to talk about Coach Dawn here because nice job by her. Lindsay Whalen, who had been the All-American player at Minnesota, was the legend of Minnesota, had been coaching them in the last several years. It really had struggled with it. And I don't want to say pushed out, but they made a coaching change and kind of to push Lindsay out, which I know there had to be some tough moves there because, again, you're talking about somebody who played at Minnesota, had taken them to a Final Four, and had a pretty stellar pro career, but it just wasn't working out. So they bring in Coach Dawn, and she's had success where she's been, especially at South Dakota. And so it's just interesting to see how a lot of that personnel was with Lindsay Whalen last year that you're going to talk about here. And now this year, where they struggled record-wise, and now this year, she's got them playing just, again, sometimes mindset, somebody's just a different voice, but here they are, 12-3, 2-2 in the league. So go ahead with their but I wanted to point that out, just that sometimes regime change, even though it's the same players, it can be night and day, and you're seeing that with Minnesota a little bit. But I'll let you talk about their personnel.
Sure. Okay. So in terms of probably their leader in terms of scoring is for sure Mara Brown. She's a six foot sophomore guard. She is averaging 19.7 points per game, which is 3rd in the league. She is also getting 4 rebounds per game, which is 11th in the league. In terms of shooting, she shoots 43% from field goal percentage. It was 16th, but she shoots 39.4 3-point percentage, which is 9th in the lead. And she tends to make around 3.5 threes per game, which is actually 2nd behind Caitlin Clark. So she makes them at a high clip. And also you don't want to foul her because she is 1st in the league with 94% free throw shooting. And last year she did make the all Big Ten freshman team. Down low, they have Mallory Heyer, she's only 6'1", but she's a sophomore, but she averages 10 points per game, but she averages 8 rebounds per game, which puts her 5th in the league, which is actually ahead of Mackenzie Holmes, in case anyone was curious where Mackenzie lands on that list. She shoots 39.5% from 3-point range as well, which is 8th in the league. So far, as a freshman, she has started all 30 games, and last year as a soft freshman, where she was averaging 10 points per game and 7 rebounds per game. So I think Mallory Heyer is another one to kind of look on. The other one is a freshman. They have, her name is Grace Grochigli. She's a 5'10" freshman. They list her as a guard/forward. She is currently averaging 11 points per game, shooting 35% from 3, which is 10th in the league. And she tends to make around 2 to 3, at least 2 to 3 threes per game, which is 8th in the league. She was the 98th recruit overall coming out of high school. And she is the number 2 recruit from Wisconsin. The other two starters that they have also average in double figures: Amaya Battle at 10.4 and Sophie Hart at 10.3. So really, they can put up some points. They have 4 of their 5 starters getting, double digits, and Mallory Heyer is right there at 9.9. So really can put up some points in a hurry. So that makes me wonder, what their bench kind of can do. So maybe not quite as deep, but definitely their starters are all very capable of putting up some points.
But young too. I mean, I didn't see the numbers, the grades on Battle and Hart, and kudos to Kathy for putting the run sheet almost entirely together by herself last night. But Mara Braun, sophomore, Mallory Heyer, sophomore, Grochoki is a freshman. I mean, they're young. So they don't necessarily, at this point, they may still be getting by on just that attitude. We don't know the difference. We're just like, hey, just put us out there and let us play. But they also, at that kind of young, she may be relying on them a lot. I'd be interested to see what some of their minutes look like, how many minutes their starters are playing in, every game, because I get a feeling that I'm kind of with you, Kathy. I'm not sure the bench is doing a whole lot. when their 5 starters are basically right at about all at or better than double figures. So, but so it makes me wonder how many minutes they're playing. Is she riding those 5 a lot? Kind of the way we have in the past at times,
we have,
but
I mean, when I add up their averages, they're averaging 70 points of their 80, or 85. So, they're definitely putting up most of their points, at least on an average basis. So,
so
I haven't watched it in Minnesota though this year. So,
no.
Just a couple glimpses here and there. So I don't know a whole lot other than looking at their stats and kind of surmising what there is. Based again on kind of some of the height that I saw at their roster, it didn't seem like height wise, they might give us a whole lot of trouble, which makes me a little concerned again about some of the times if they have any of those athletic guards that can really drive on us. I don't know if that's what they have or not, but that's something to kind of watch on. But again, I think they really rely on the 3. That's what it kind of seems like to me. So hopefully our perimeter defense kind of gets locked in when we come and play them. Or this is the home game when they come and play us on Wednesday for our 99th episode that I'll miss.
Again, remind you, Coach Tonsoni will be joining with me on Wednesday night for that. I'm not going to go through our numbers here real quick, just because we didn't have a chance to update them after this game, but just big numbers here for Indiana is that they're still basically top half of the league in scoring, top quarter of the league in scoring defense, so they're still basically right where they're going to be. I think the one thing I'll be interested to look at come tomorrow or Monday when I start putting the run sheet together for Wednesday, what's the rebounding margin? Because coming into the night, we were 7th in the league at plus 3.7, but we got out rebounded by 9. Yes, we got out rebounded. So that's going to go down slightly with that. So quickly, Kath, let's go around the league. Wisconsin yesterday went to Michigan. Michigan, the kind of the Jekyll and Hyde of the Big Ten right now.
That was today, wasn't it?
That game was yesterday. Michigan 76-52 win over Wisconsin. Or no, that was today. I'm sorry. Today is Saturday. I'm thinking today's Sunday. I'm sorry. Sorry, today. But again, Michigan, the Jekyll and Hyde of the league. Tomorrow, a couple games to keep an eye on. I'll get your thoughts about this. First of all, let's go first. I missed this when it was announced, but I guess that Purdue Maryland game has been rescheduled for tomorrow.
That's right. Yeah. So for those of you who missed it, Maryland, they were having quite a bit of rain and storms on the East Coast there. Maryland got a leak in their gym. And so that game, I believe, was rescheduled, right? Isn't that why that one was rescheduled? Yeah. So that's coming up tomorrow. And then Nebraska is.
Well, no, I want to get your thoughts on that game about Purdue and Maryland.
Sorry. Yeah.
I think that's a big game because whoever loses that has 3 losses in the league.
That's right. Yeah. I was just going to pull up the standings here too, because my memory is not as good as yours. So they have 3 losses. Is that what you said?
No, I said they both have 2 losses, right?
Right. Okay. So this would be their 3rd. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I need to pull it up. So I should have had that done before we started.
No, you're fine. But I'm just saying, to me, they both have 2 losses. So whoever loses that game, it really puts them in a bind.
Yeah. So Purdue has got 2 losses and Maryland's got 2 losses. So both 2-2, and they're just really bunched up right in the middle of the league there. So we have Michigan State also and Minnesota both with 2-2 as well. So I think this, you start to think that Maryland might make some separation in this game. But I'm not quite sure what Maryland team we ever get from game to game anymore. I think that's kind of like what we're seeing with the Michigan team as well this year. So I think that Maryland comes out on top just being at home. And Purdue has shown signs to me that maybe they're not quite as good, but there again, they pulled out some games where I wasn't quite sure if they would or not. But I think on the road, at home, Maryland's going to win this game.
And then you also tomorrow have Nebraska at Minnesota. And we kind of hit this one already a little bit because we said about Minnesota playing tomorrow. But to me, this is when we find out a little bit about Nebraska because Nebraska's played well at home in Lincoln here over the last few years. Can they go now? Minnesota, we're not quite sure whether they're really pretender or contender, but can Nebraska go on the road to Minnesota and get out of there with a win?
Yeah, and that's a big game too for Nebraska. I mean, they only have the 1 loss when we beat them on Sunday. And so, that's a big game for them. And, that we keep saying, sneak a few on the road and then defend home. And for the most part, other than our 1 loss, they've actually done both. They've been winning on the road as well. Minnesota being 2-2, but they had some really good games early on that makes us wonder about them. So I think this game might actually really be close. But do you have a prediction on this game? I think Minnesota at home, but I
Yeah,
really
it's at
don't know. I
Minnesota.
wouldn't put any money on it.
No, I'm not sure I really would either, but I'm going to take Nebraska here. I really like that team. And I think, Markowski especially, we'll see what happens on the road, but I really like Markowski. I think you can play through Markowski. And then I think they got to find a way to get Jazz Shelley going. I forget the freshman's name we talked about with Nebraska, but she's got a chance to, again, do some nice stuff. But I think they got to find a way to get Jazz Shelley going. She struggled the last couple of games that I've seen anyway, with shooting and scoring. And she's an all Big Ten caliber player. But I'm going to go with Nebraska. And I really like that team. I think Nebraska is going to be that team that I think is going to end up being in the top 4 in the league. I think they're going to be the one that kind of displaces Maryland this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't, that wouldn't surprise me at all either. Like I said, I'm not putting any money in anytime soon on that game.
And then this one is Michigan State at Ohio State, Kathy. Big game because, again, we think Michigan State's pretty legit as a contender, at least to get into the tournament, maybe make some noise. But they, for Ohio State now, they've already got a loss in the league. They went up to they lost to Michigan. Can't afford to lose at home. But Michigan State's capable, if they're playing well, to give Ohio State a game. And Ohio State's already, what I was getting ready to say was, 2 losses in the league is going to be really tough because I'm not sure Iowa and Indiana are going to lose much more than 2, maybe 3 games anyway.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, Michigan State, they did come into Iowa and and almost winning that game with a Caitlin
played them better than we did.
Way better than we did for sure. But Ohio State is, they were put on the wire against Penn State at home too. And so I think this is going to be another really interesting game tomorrow to watch. Ultimately, I think Ohio State pulls it out, but I think it's going to be a highly competitive game. And I think that's probably the one, if I can, I'm going to try to tune into if I have a chance to tune into it.
So I threw the Wisconsin-Iowa game on Tuesday on there thinking we would win today and that Iowa, see how Iowa would bounce back. But we don't imagine Wisconsin-Iowa on Tuesday now is going to be anything worth talking about. So Kathy, let's take it over to final thoughts. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I think this was not a fun night for anybody involved for Indiana women's basketball for sure. We know that wasn't fun for the players and the coaches. It wasn't fun for us as fans to watch. But I think we have to also sit back and look at the bigger picture. This is still a program who has come very far in the last 4 or 5 years, especially under the whole 10 years with Terry Morin, where before they were just absolutely ecstatic to get into the NIT. And now we're talking about, we're not happy if we're a number 3 seed or we only have 1 loss in the conference and the sky is falling kind of situation where I don't think this is. Was this their best performance? No. Was it embarrassing? Absolutely not. And I hope no one is out there saying this is embarrassing or this was a terrible loss. I really don't. It's just that we got in and we just were completely outmatched in a game where our travel schedule got messed up. There's a lot of things going against us and it just wasn't our night shooting and it wasn't our night defensively locked in. I think it's something that hopefully they take back and learn from, similar to what we saw after the Stanford game. The Stanford game was there. I just didn't think they were locked in or put up the effort from from minute 1. I didn't think that was the case tonight. But again, this was only our 2nd loss in the game or the year. It's January 13th, and the sky is absolutely not falling. And I absolutely expect that we'll bounce back. And when we come back on Wednesday and talk about that game, we're talking about a very different post-game show there.
I certainly hope so. My final thoughts kind of echo Kathy's, really just, and it really per se not embarrassing. Was it disappointing? Yeah, you were hoping they would go in there and get the win. You were hoping and make it, at least be like last year went down to the wire. I think the one thing that this team is still struggling with, and we don't call lingering questions here on doing the work, but I think the thing that they're struggling with is in a situation, Mackenzie's I think everybody recognizes Mackenzie's their best player. But in a game like that, where what you really need is a guard, and I hate to make it come back to make it sound like it's just Grace Berger, but obviously we got used to Grace Berger being that player, but they need a guard, and I thought Chloe's been showing some glimpses of it, but you need a guard because they're going to be the one with the balls in their hands. So Chloe, Sarah, even to a certain degree, a Sydney, Yarden possibly, but it's somebody who can just say, "Get me the ball." And I'm going to go make something happen. Not necessarily force up a shot, not necessarily just score for themselves, but get the ball to the right spot. That person with some basketball IQ, and do that. And I think that's what they're struggling with right now. So when they get in a game like this against Iowa, where where it kind of snowballs on them, and it starts getting away from them. They don't have that player, or at least they don't recognize who that player yet, or that player hasn't stepped up yet. So to me, that's going to be kind of the interesting thing going forward as we go into some of these games in the Big Ten, and as we head toward the tournament. Can you find that player? Do the players find, is there somebody that they'll be like, hey, you can do this? Because I think it has to almost be a team type thing. You got to get 3 or 4 of them who'll be like, you've got to go, and we trust you to do this. Be that player. You watch, especially for somebody who was around for 2-3 years with Grace, like you saw her do it. We trust you. Be that player. But right now I think they're struggling with that. So that's kind of my final thoughts as well. But again, I think those are things that get magnified in a game like this. When you're winning, they're not as big an issue.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, so some Bob Thompson music there for us. We will return on Wednesday, January 17th, after the Minnesota game, approximately 10 Eastern, 9 Central. I hope it warms up by then. With special,
me too.
I don't know about you, but here in Northwest Indiana, they're talking about wind chills over the next few days, about minus 25 on,
Is that it? We're supposed to be in minus 40s, so wow. We win.
You win.
We want to win that game.
But we'll have a special guest with us for the first time on Doing the Work. Head coach, or the coach, Brian Tonsoni, will be joining us for our 99th episode. Yeah, our 99th episode. That means only 2 more till we get to the 100th episode. And I'm going to throw it to Kathy here, because Kathy's really done a lot of the work on this. She's the one kind of, we started talking about this, and she kind of got the idea for this. So she's going to talk to you guys. I got a sneeze coming. She's going to talk to you guys about what we're doing for the 100th show and that will be the post-game show after the Purdue game a week from tomorrow, next Sunday, January 21st. Kathy, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So while Jeff is sneezing his head off there, let's talk about that. So yeah, after the Purdue game, we will be going live with our 100th episode. When we do that, my husband, Sean, has been very graciously voluntold that he is going to be keeping track of anybody that comes and joins us in our live Workaholics. So if you're following along on YouTube, there's the place that you can chat in the live chat. We would like for you to make some kind of basketball comment about the game that you saw on the television and chat along with us. So it can't just be come in and say hi and leave. And then at the end of the show, so again, you have to stay through the whole show, be present to win. We will be doing, courtesy of the Back Home Network and the Home Field Apparel, you will get to have a chance for a random drawing for whoever did the chat to get a Home Field Apparel choice of anything that you want off of there. So there's no restriction of dollar amount. It doesn't have to be just a hat. You can go out and look at anything you want. And we will help get that set up with Jared from Assembly Call will be helping to execute that part of it. So be sure to come join us, save the date. It's a week from tomorrow on Sunday, the 21st. So make sure that you keep that on your calendar and make sure you join us for that.
Yeah. So thank you, Kathy, for providing all that and doing the work on that. You really kind of taking the point on that and worked with Jared to get that set up. So kudos to you as well. Also want to point out, Assembly Call will be on Tuesday after the Purdue game. And for sarcastic Mike, who says, I'm going to the Purdue game. Well, you got a phone, there's YouTube on your phone,
yeah,
join us from your phone. Kathy's done it with us. So anyway, but the Purdue IU men Assembly Call will be on Tuesday night after the Purdue game. So if you want to see us do the show live and be a part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And that's youtube.com/ that's the @ Back Home Network, youtube.com/ Back Home Network. You can be part of our private community as well. Find out more at assemblycall.substack.com. And then special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our logos. A big thank you to Bob Thompson for our music that you've heard throughout the broadcast. And thank you guys all for listening wherever you get your podcast feed from. Those of you who joined us on the Workaholics night, we had a really good crowd in here. We had over 100 at one point here in the Workaholics. And until then, we'll talk to you on Wednesday night, Coach Tonsoni and I. Until then, keep your elbow in, your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
And cut.
Yep.
All right. Well, good. Yeah, let's flush this one and move on again. There's nothing you can do but learn from it. So I'll be interested to hear Coach Morin's take on it in her press conference when I can listen to that recording tomorrow. So
yeah, our friend Ari was texting us a little bit as well, but it sounds like she was not very pleased, which I don't blame her. She shouldn't have been.
There wasn't much to be pleased about.
But there's some soul searching shit. As I think the comment she made was that there's got to be some soul searching, and I think she's more. Kind of referencing back that they're two, road games that have been, the two games that you probably would have marked at the beginning of the season in most respects as possible losses. They haven't played well. They have not executed. The first game, as I said, I didn't think they played with great effort. I thought tonight effort was there. They just didn't execute. But it'll be interesting to see how they come out.
Exactly. I didn't think until the fourth quarter, they definitely seemed to kind of slack off a little bit in that fourth quarter. But again, I understand that at that point, it was probably an insurmountable lead and it was deflating. And I they're human and I get it. It was demoralizing and I can understand why they kind of backed off a bit.
One thing we didn't talk about, and I know this isn't the Iowa postgame show, but we talked a little bit about this, and I would have thought, you look at Kate Martin, 10 points, 12 rebounds. I didn't realize she had 12 rebounds, for somebody who was not rebounding a ton coming into tonight.
Yeah,
they got the games from their role players that we didn't get, and we had to have those type of games.
And we've had them before. It just wasn't tonight.
Right.
So, they just had people step up and I really thought our defense kind of slacked off quite a bit, especially the perimeter defense. It just didn't seem quite as locked in today. I wonder about the travel, how much that kind of played into it. But I'm sure travel had things to do with it, but it wasn't whatever the 24 points that we ended up losing. I still think it was the perimeter defense and 30 points, different margin for 3-point shooting. That's a killer. You can't overcome that.
Over helping on D. Three things we talked about throughout the broadcast: over helping on defense, poor shooting, and turnovers all lead to a 27. That's how you get a 27-point loss.
Yeah, a sarcastic Mike. He says, remember the motto, what do you want the numbers to be? Well, at least sarcastic Mike, I already told Sean, my husband, he is not eligible for the home field apparel drawing. So we know he won't be cooking the books that way. And I don't think he's met any of you. So he can't be biased in terms of who he likes better. So I feel like we have and Jeff and I aren't eligible either as much as we would like to be. So Jeff, myself, Ari's not eligible, and Sean, my husband, are all not eligible. So hopefully it'll be a very fair and even type of thing. He's going to create a lovely random number generator in Excel, and it'll be easy.
We joked about this on the last broadcast. I think we actually had it in kind of the doing the work after dark. Like Sean has worked as a controller. We need him to be make a quick appearance on the podcast with like a suit and a tie and a briefcase. Like, he's got to do at the Academy Awards. Like they do at the Academy Awards or the Emmys, Yeah.
He just said in the chat he can be bribed though. So I'm not sure how they're going to get the bribe to him. Well, maybe we should plug as well if anyone's coming that first weekend in February for the Simply Call or the Back Home Network now, not just Simply Call. Jeff and I, for doing the work, I think will be part of that show that they're doing after the game on Saturday. So if you'll be in Bloomington, Jeff and you'll be there on Saturday. Is that the plan?
Nah, it's going to depend on what the local team does, because if that's sectional week here in Indiana for the girls, and our girls right now here in Rensselaer are number 1 in 3A, so they could make a deep run. So I may have to stay home and do radio work that weekend. So, but if they're not playing on that Saturday, I'm going to come down for the meetup. So yes, I will be there if I can.
I will 100% be there unless we get more weather like this.
Maybe I can call in, depending upon what time you guys do it. Maybe I can do like a hop
that's
in
true.
on
So
video.
see if we can get the StreamYard link to you. So so we will be there for sure. So if you have a chance to come to that meetup, we'd love to meet you there on that Saturday after I think the men play Penn State that game. So
absolutely.
But looking forward to that as well. So for any of you out there with cold weather, stay warm. For any of you in the warm weather, let us know your address and we'll come visit.
So Kathy, let's get out of here. It's a late night already, 10 o'clock our time, 11 o'clock for the people on the fast time zone. So let's get out here and
Yep.
we'll talk again. I won't get to see you for about a week because you're going to be off on
Yeah,
Wednesday.
that's right. A week
But
from tomorrow. That's right.
stay
I'll
warm.
listen to you and Coach Tonsoni afterwards. Maybe I'll try to listen on the drive home from Kansas City. So, all right. Well, good night,
Okay.
everybody.
Night, everybody.